In this video, we're going to be going over how to create a more realistic image using the watercolor brush pens. Now this is a companion video to the one where I did sort of more cartoon effects, and I'm trying now to achieve a more realistic effect using these markers. This is the first time I've ever tried to draw something realistic using these markers, so we're going to see how this goes. This is an image of Frida Kahlo that I've used quite frequently. Okay, so now that I've finished doing all the realistic images, you can see that this was the one that I did dry on dry, which causes quite a streaky effect. Reminds me a little bit of Van Gogh with a line work. It does look somewhat realistic, I'll be honest though, my proportions are way off of the forehead, but it does sort of get the effect more so than the cartoony one. So then if we look at using wet brushes, so using the brush pens and then using wet brush on top of them to kind of take it a little bit further and treat it more like paint, it works okay, but just like with this one, I'm less than impressed with the effect of turning a brush marker into a wet material when using just a standard sketch paper. Okay, this is 105 DSM, it's not very strong. You can see it comes through quite a bit. There's a little bit of bleeding. It comes through quite strong with the ghosting. I'm not a huge fan of it. But overall, you know, it's another effect to keep in mind. The last one is when we're using the watercolor paper. Now, when using the watercolor paper, you can see that for the realistic one, I can push the tones and the tints quite further, and I get closer to kind of figuring out how to get the skin tones I was aiming to achieve with this particular image. So overall, I am most satisfied by using the watercolor brushes with a refillable brush pen on the watercolor paper. But you have to remember, you have to work with the materials you have. So if you only have the sketching paper, then it's probably best not to include water. But if you're going to include water, you should aim to get yourself a watercolor paper. And you can see there's the cartoon version versus the somewhat vaguely realistic version.